ओम सर्वधर्मस्थापकस्त्वं सर्वधर्मस्वरूपकः आचार्याणां महाचार्यो रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. We are studying Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, as the spiritual teacher, second part. And we are in the fourth chapter. The name of that chapter is As the Spiritual Teacher Concluded. And we are seeing that remaining things are spiritual mood has been telling, Guru Bhav, and how it culminates into Divya Bhav, that we'll see now, maybe in tomorrow's class. So, we have been seeing that Master's Thakur sees everything from two levels, level like us and spiritual level. And in level like us also, he sees much more detail than we. He sees the what we call the unnatural aberration, irregular things. He immediately notices them and much more details because his mind is not attached to anything. So he is seeing everything which we do not see, even though we see, we do not observe. And in that, his judgment about things and persons and everything is dependent upon how much that will make him, help him to go spiritually forward. That is the last para we read, 29. And he saw that he did not do sadhana according to scriptures first, practiced himself, and then all his experiences tallied with all the scriptures. And then he followed the scriptures also because it is necessary for us. And he saw that all the scriptures of the world, all they are telling with his experiences. So that is the last thing we saw. So now we come to para 30. The goal of human life is the attainment of the non-dual knowledge. This Thakur knows by his own experiences. That means, till we get that, what is the goal? Till we get that, our life is not fulfilled. We never feel satisfied. We never feel fulfillment of life. Some want remain in us always. And so, that is the goal of life. Attainment of the non-dual knowledge. Non-dual knowledge means subject and object are not different. That is called non-dual. Non-dual knowledge means we as jivas, as subjects, living in the midst of this world which is objects, is not real. And because it is not real, it leads to several imperfections and wants and desires in us. But if we get the knowledge, if we experience that the subject and object are not different, then no scope of any imperfection, no want, no desire. We become one with all. So that is the goal of human life. And in that goal, how much a man proceeds, that is how Thakur will judge. In that state, all jackals howl in the same way. Jackals means people of realization. In the outside world, men, for example, have different swaras. But jackals, when they shout in the same voice. And so that example is taken. That the man of realization will talk only one thing, that there is no two. He may talk in different ways. He may put that in different forms. But the gist of the talk of the very important time. Some people say Shankar's philosophy and Thakur's philosophy and Swamiji's philosophy. Thakur himself is telling that in that state, if you are realized your real nature, then your talk will be same. If the talk is different, then you have to understand you have not realized the real state. So that is what he said. And the jackal's example is taken because all animals have different sounds. But jackals, when they shout in the same voice. So now one exception some people feel, or we may feel, and that exception is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not talk like that. That is what we see. So Thakur has reconciled this point also. How he says, with Sri Chaitanya, devotion was like the tusk of an elephant which are seen. Devotion on a dual level. Devotion itself can be on the Advaita level. But in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a dualistic devotion, a slightly less Advaitic devotion. And he taught this dualistic devotion. Now the example Thakur gives brilliant example. We see the elephant and the tusk of the elephant. We call it the tooth of the elephant. But he does not eat by that tooth. What he does, he hits others by that tooth. It is his weapon to hit others. Inside, what is the tusk? It is like a nose. And below that his mouth is there. And there his teeth are there. So by the tusk he lifts things and puts in the mouth. And when he masticates, he eats, the teeth are very different. So this Thakur has realized, and Thakur is telling us, so no doubt should remain in anybody's mind. Devotion was like the tusk of an elephant which are seen, and the non-dual knowledge like the inner teeth which are not seen. So they are not seen, but that is his own eating food. His own realizations are same as the other Mahapurushas. Important thing Thakur is telling us, very important. Because Chaitanya is an incarnation. He has realized his full real nature. And so his inner realization is Advaita. He thought that people, it will not suit people, so he taught them Dvaita. But those who are real sadhakas will not stop there. Approach to non-dual knowledge was the standard by which the masters judged the high or low state of a man or a society. So all this together, Thakur makes that a standard. Approach to the non-dual knowledge. That is another important thing. In Shankar, the emphasis is on the absolute. And so anything below it, sometimes he may call that is unreal. But we are reading Chandogya Upanishad these days. In the 7th chapter, he has shown the value of all the states below that. But normally, people will feel like that. Now, how Thakur judges how much it has proceeded up to that point. That is his judgment. So that will decide higher and lower spirituality. And a society, how much that social laws or whatever is there in society, how much that society approaches Advaita, that is the judgment for the society and for the individual. So this is the para heading of para 30. Now we see the details. While one studies the natural bent of the master's mind, natural bent, for us it has to be cultivated. What is natural in Thakur, for us it is to be cultivated. While one studies the natural bent of the master's mind, it becomes clear to one that to attain the nirvikalpa plane of consciousness, nirvikalpa means no sankalpa at all. If such sankalpa arises, the opposite arises when there are two. But when in the mind there are not two, then the reality is realized. And realize the non-dual being is the ultimate experience in human life. Beyond that, there is no experience. Again, when he sees the world, he sees that one is me, the one is the object, and same thing is the relation. All jackals howl in the same way there. He meant to say that just as all jackals howl in the same way, so each of those who attend the Nirvikalpa plane has said the same thing about God, the cause of the universe, as viewed from that plane. The exception about Sri Chaitanya, the incarnation of love, Prema Avatar, love incarnated. The master said, just as the tusks of an elephant seen from outside are for killing his enemies, and the inner ones not seen, not so seen, are for the purpose of chewing his food. So in the case of the great Lord Mahaprabhu, dualism was an outward attitude. Here clearly mentioned dualism. So that devotion is on the dualistic plane. Dualism was an outward attitude and non-dualism an inward one. It is therefore superfluous to say that non-dual knowledge, which is always of a uniform nature, non-dual knowledge in everybody it is the same, was the standard by which the master judged everything. To the degree that any ideas, actions or ceremonies help forward individuals or societies which are aggregate of individuals towards that plane, to that degree did the master regard those ideas, etc., as higher than others. Higher, how much it leads to that state. Visions, now it is another point. Judgment is over. Visions knowable to oneself and those knowable to others also. Swasamvedya and Parasamvedya. Anubhav. Sometimes he sees something which others will not see. Many things in our own life like that. But sometimes what he sees will result in outside also. The subtler ideas will express themselves. And man can verify that what Thakur said is true. So how to verify what Thakur's ideas? Is for some of the ideas, unless we get those ideas, we cannot find. But is Parasam with the ideas, by seeing the outside results, we can understand that what Thakur says is true. Again, when we study the master's visions, born of his spiritual moods, we find a distinction. Namely, some are knowable to himself alone and some to others also. Objective. Some of those visions of the master were thoughts of the master's mind confined within his own body, solidified and embodied, so to speak. Within his body, solidified and embodied by steadfast and constant practice and manifested to him in those forms, and it was he only who could see them because of his practice and all that. Some others were seen by him as he passed through higher and higher planes and was on the verge of the Nirvikalpa plane, or when he was abiding in Bhavamukh. Bhavamukh, we are repeatedly seen, is the universal mind. So if something arises there, it arises in everybody's mind, it will be seen physically also. Two things, on the verge of the Nirvikalpa plane. That is same state while going. And while coming back, it is called Bhavamukh. Same state near to duality, non-duality is that while he is going. And when he attains Nirvikalpa and comes back, that is called Bhavamukh. The contents of the visions of the latter kind, although unknown to others at that time, were for him quite objectively existent. And he would predict their coming true in course of time, and all actually saw them later as facts and events. What happens in the subtle takes time to happen in the gross. And when he has seen it in the universal mind, he knows that it is going to happen outside. So people may not believe at that time. They will not see at that time. But later on they will see. In order to realize that the former class of visions were true, one had to be endowed like him. So his subjective, what we are calling, is also not subjective. But he has attained them. We can also attain them if we do the same practice. In that particular state, it is true. In order to realize that the former class of visions were true, one had to be endowed like him with faith, reverence, shraddha, steadfastness, nishtha, etc. Or one had to ascend to that plane in which the master had those visions. But in order to realize the latter class as true, one required no faith, no sadhana. One had to believe them as the results compelled one to do so. Believe them means the result will show that, and so we believe. We are not believing blindly here. Ah, now the construction in English, one had to believe them as the results compelled one to do so. That is the English construction. The results compelled one to believe. That is the way. According to Bengali, the results we see, so we believe that those were true. That is the thing. Not that we believed previously. The master's mind could not rest till it arrived at reliable conclusions about the states of things and persons. That is the very. When he sees a place or a person, immediately he will analyze on the scale of spirituality. How much this will help a man grow spiritually. He could not rest till he had judged that. Because he is the world teacher and he has to tell people about it. So he does not rest unless he has judged the value of that place or person. From what we have said before about the nature of the master's mind and what we have said just now about it, we can understand that such a mind would not remain idle even in the normal state of consciousness, because that is the purpose of his life. For it could not feel satisfied till it had studied the nature and behavior of those things and persons it came in contact with even for a moment, and arrived at reliable conclusions about them. In his childhood, it discerned that scholars studied the scriptures for the purpose of earning money, which led him to refrain from learning the art that taught him the boiling of rice and plantain, as he derisively called it. Because in those days, the priests or pandits might not have received a casual remuneration, but they were given rice and plantain. So, bundling the rice and plantain. As he advanced in age, his mind came in contact with various people in various places and arrived at various conclusions about them. Those conclusions will be the subject of our discussion now. His Guru Bhav, how we benefit from that Guru Bhav, that is the topic now. What the Master saw in the narrow plane of consciousness, the ill will between the Shaktas and the Vaishnavas. That was maximum in Bengal in those days. Even today, throughout India, it is seen. Especially the Vaishnavas are narrow. I will quote my experiences from Tamil. The Shaivas will go to Vishnu temple also, and they will name their sons and Narayana, Murli, those were their names. And they had the Shaiva names also. Vaishnavas, on the other hand, will not go to Shiva temples and will not give the sons and daughters' name anything attached to Shiva. So that narrowness, Shaivas also will derive the Vaishnavas. So that is even today. And Thakur noticed it. And Thakur noticed that this is harmful. Because we are limiting God. God's nature is, what is Vaishnava and Shaiva? Shaiva is beyond the world and Vaishnava is immanent in the world. So God is both Nirguna and Saguna. And so, in our mind, whether we follow a particular path or not is different. But we should never have hatred or deride the next path. So that Thakur saw by his own experiences. He went through all the Vaishnava Bhavas and reached Radvaita. He went through the Shaiva or Shakta Bhavas and reached Radvaita. So that becomes a standard. It is superfluous to say that the ill will between the Shaktas and Vaishnavas of Bengal which came into existence at the time of the passing away of Sri Chaitanya. Why I say so? Chaitanya did not preach this, but Chaitanya emphasized the Vaishnava so much that it came into being. Continued unbroken. Although a few rare sadhakas like Ramakrishna and others realized with the help of the sadhana the oneness of Kali and Krishna and preached that the ill will was wrong and uncalled for, it is clear from the censorious gloating which accompanied the mutual condemnation of the deities of both sides. Censorious gloating, that means one is censoring them and taking pride. Mutual condemnation of the deities. So a very big rubbish literature grew in Bengal that the generality of the people, instead of paying heed to their words, have allowed themselves to be carried away by hatred. Their words means Ram Prasad. Ram Prasad and a few sadhaks told that there is no difference between them. But the generality, their literature produced was so vast that man in general did not pay value to what Ram Prasad has said. But though he is a man of realization, but they have believed in these divisive tendencies. Carried away by hatred. It is needless to say that the master was acquainted with that fact from his childhood. Again, applying himself to the disciplines prescribed in the scriptures of both the communities and attaining perfection in both, he realized both the paths to be equally true. He then clearly understood that the cause of the mutual hatred between the Shaktas and the Vaishnavas was the vanity and egotism born of lack of spirituality. Lack of spirituality gives rise to vanity, egotism, and that gives this hatred. To remove that hatred from his own household, he got them all initiated in the mantra of Shakti. They were all Ram devotees. And Thakur got them initiated in the Shakti mantra. So in their minds, his family people's mind will have no hatred. And then he was able to preach to all, same thing. The master's father, a worshipper of Sri Ramachandra, providentially got this stone emblem called Raghuvir and installed it in his house. Although the master was thus born in a Vaishnava family, it was evident that from childhood he had equal love towards both Shiva and Vishnu. On Shivratri day he had joined to Samadhi, identification with Shiva. So that distinguishes a person if he is a Vaishnava. But equal devotion to Shiva is there. Regularly, Shiva Mahimna Stotra, Monday Shiva Puja. So then he does not have that narrowness. His neighbors say even now that he dressed himself as Shiva at one time during his childhood and remained in ecstasy for a few hours in that mood, and they show the particular spot where that event took place as proof of this fact. They cannot show Thakur there, so they show this place where it happened. Another event may be mentioned here. At one time, the master had everyone of his household initiated in the mantras of both Vishnu and Shakti. The master acted in this manner only to remove that hatred from their minds. Yesterday only we thought of that medicine. The origin of the custom of sadhus prescribing and administering medicine, which led gradually to their spiritual degradation. How this happened historically. He is not criticizing anybody, he is showing the history. It is now well known that Ashoka the Great, the man of Dharma, Dharma Ashoka, he was known as Chanda Ashoka when he killed many people in war. And then his character was transformed and his name was Dharma Ashoka. It is now well known that Ashoka the Great, the man of Dharma, made up his mind to spread religion and learning for the good of humanity. Oh, now I was thinking how this Ashoka the Great has come. Dharma Ashoka we know. So I report to Bengal. बहु प्राचीन युगे महाराज धर्माशोक महाराज. Maharaj is great emperor, not himself great. Maharaj means bigger king. Maharaj, emperor, we may say. No, I will translate it in a very different way. It is now well known that the Emperor Ashoka, the man of Dharma. Instead of Ashoka the Great, we would say the Emperor Ashoka, the man of religion, made up his mind to spread religion and learning for the good of humanity. Religion and knowledge in general, learning. He established hospitals for men and beasts in various places of India. Beast, animals, not the forest animals. Gramya Pashu Sakal. Gramya Pashu Sakal are not called beasts. शारीरिक रोग निवारणेर जन्य तिनी अस्पताल. Man, and actually you can put the qualificatory word also, domestic animals. In various places of India, for the treatment of their physical ailments, and made medical plants, creepers, etc. easily available to the public by having them cultivated and collected. Moreover, he sent through Buddhist monks to foreign countries medicines and medicinal herbs and made them available there, outside India also. It is perhaps from that time, because it is inference. It is perhaps from that time that sadhus began to collect and preserve medicine. Because Ashoka did not send grasthas. The Buddhistic monks were going to different countries, so with them he sent. So other sadhus started practicing that. Again, that custom became more prevalent during the Tantric age. Seeing the spiritual degradation of sadhus on account of that custom, the authors of the Sangitas in the following age raised a great objection against it. But that custom has not died even now in the conservative India. What is conservative? India likes to keep the old ideas. Though new ideas it accepts, but the old ideas it does not give up. So though the later scriptures tell us that is not good, but the old idea remains. During his stay at Dakshineshwar and travels to holy places, the master saw many monks falling a prey to worldly enjoyments forever. That due to this tantrika and these medicines and all that, the mind comes down. Thus the master was convinced of the lack of spirituality among the monks too. For he said to us time and again, never believe sadhus who prescribe and administer medicine. Wow. Straight away. Who practice exorcism, taking out ghosts and all that. Who receive money and who adorn their bodies with the outward marks of religion, such as tilaka, wearing wooden sandals, etc., rather excessive. Some essential marks are there, they put vibhuti or rudrakshamala, but excessively they paint themselves like that, rather excessively, and pose themselves as big sadhus, the mark serving as their signboard. So this is another English word which the master knew, signboard. So this is not a new thing. It's an old thing. Sadhus, when they digress from their spiritual path, fall into lower tracks of desires. Now, sadhus who prescribe and administer medicine, practice exorcism, who receive money. Thakur did not even touch money. So, if the sadhu receives money, he becomes lovi. If he keeps money rather, he will definitely become greedy. And then he will try for enjoyment. What will he do with money? And then showing themselves as sadhus, hypocrisy, that is the worst enemy. Now, Saradananda Swami has a balance always. It does not mean Thakur criticized the sadhus. No. The master's opinion on sadhus who merely put on the religious garb. Let no one think from what has been said that seeing the hypocritical and fallen monks, the master, like the people of the West, was of opinion that all the monastic communities should be abolished. That is what the Western people tell us. For we heard the master say on this subject from time to time, an ordinary vairagi in religious garb, living on alms, compared with a householder of good character, must be regarded as higher than the other, if he lives on alms. For though he does not practice yoga or other religious exercises, if he possesses a good character and lives his whole life on bhiksha, two things, no money, no sexual enjoyment. So good character and lives his whole life on bhiksha. He has in this life gone much farther ahead on the path of renunciation than an ordinary householder. Swamiji has quoted shlokas. Meru Sarshapayor Yadyat Surya Kadyotoyariva Tadvat Bhikshu Grastayo, like a mustard seed and a mountain, like a firefly in the sun. That much is the difference between a sannyasi and a grasta. Two conditions. Sannyasi might not have practiced sadhana, but he has kept up his sannyas. Kam kanchan, money and women, he has not fallen into that trap. That much. If that is there, the sadhu, maybe a vagabond, may he is not practicing sadhana, but he has already crossed certain hurdles in his life. So he is forward than the grasta. The aforesaid words of the master are among the many instances illustrating the fact that to him renunciation of everything for the sake of God was the measure of a man's conduct and character. Whether he is able to give up social norms and everything for the sake of God. Now the other side, the lives of true sadhus breathe life into the Shastra. We have already given many examples of the fact that steadfast sadhus belonging to any community whatever, following either the path of devotion or of knowledge, were much honored by the Master. The lamp of the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion of India. What is the eternal religion of India? To realize God by whatever path. Has been kept burning by the realization of these great souls. Because some people realize that is why this lamp is burning. The authority of the Vedas and other scriptures as repositories of spiritual truths is demonstrated by those among them who have reached the aim of their lives by the realization of God and are freed from all bondages of Maya. For the Vaisheshikas and other philosophers of this country have unanimously said that the Vedas are revealed to the Aptas, those who have attained the truth only. It was therefore no wonder that the Master, possessed of a profound inner vision, could know that fact and honored them accordingly. Anubhav, if they experience, they are the highest. If they are tyagis, they have gone forward. If they experience the truth, they are highest. This is very much wanting these days. The Master noticed narrowness even in the true sadhu, the other side. True sadhus, they are practicing, but their narrowness has entered. Although the Master viewed with an exceedingly loving eye the sadhus going forward along their own paths with steadfast devotion and enjoyed their company greatly, enjoyed their company. I'm not always happy with this word. तादेर संगे स्वयं सर्वदा विशेष आनंदानुभव करिलेव. Instead of enjoyment, you say experiencing happiness or bliss. Experiencing and felt happy in their company. Greatly, he invariably found in them lack of one thing, which pained him much on several occasions. He saw that they could not mix uniformly with all communities with equal love. Though it was so easy for him, he noticed this narrowness even among the advanced aspirants, the sannyasis treading the path of non-duality, not to speak of those traveling in the path of devotion. Those who are following the path of devotion and are stuck in dualism are naturally narrow. But those who are following the path of Advaita, for them to become narrow, the paths will show that reality is one without a second, approachable through various paths. A few years back, I was invited to a sabha, and there the Vedanti script speaker, so-called Vedanti speaker, said that we do not believe that God can be reached by all paths straight away. Only by Shankar Siddhanta we can reach there. Shankar Siddhanta will not make you reach. Your experience, your realization as directed by Shankara will make you reach. Only Siddhanta does not make you reach. And we do not believe that all paths lead. Because you have never traveled by any path. So this peculiarity is there in the so-called Advaita Vedantis. This is the peculiarity we should not have in there. That is what Thakur is telling. Not to speak of those traveling in the path of devotion. Long before they attain the liberal sameness of the non-dual plane, they learned uniformly to hate people going on all other paths. If they reach non-dual plane, they will never hate. As inferior in spiritual fitness, or at best to view them with condensation. Okay, some truth is there, low truth is there, later on they will learn. That is one attitude, most liberal attitude. Otherwise, wrong path, condemnation. Unless you are traveled by that path, how do you condemn it? The liberal-minded master, it is needless to say, was much grieved to see that kind of mutual hatred among people going forward to the same goal. And he clearly saw that the said illiberality of exclusiveness was produced by the lack of true spirituality. If you grow spiritually, one speaker I remember said, secular is the word these days, paying equal respect to all religions. So one speaker said, the more a man is spiritual, the more he is secular. So more a man gets higher experience, his mind broadens. If our mind is stuck in our path, our body, sankuchita, then it is not progressing. The master had an experience of this lack of spirituality in process of pilgrimage. What a great difference between our experience and that of the master. We go to pilgrimage, master goes to pilgrimage, and there he sees all these things. When he was staying at the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar, the master got daily proof of exclusiveness and lack of spirituality among both classes of men, householders and monks. Vaishnava Shakti is among householders also. When he traveled to holy places and temples, he found that these evils were not less, but in fact more virulent there. That means if you are a practicing spiritual man, you become more narrow. The quarrel among the Brahmins, when they received gifts from Mathur, then we should get first, we should get first. The tantric sadhaka's improper conduct at Kashi due to excessive drinking after performing the Divine Mother's nominal worship. Actually, why they drink? The hold of oneself on one's mind is reduced, and then he can progress spiritually. That is the idea between taking wine by the tantric sadhaka. But missing the goal and everything, nominally doing little sadhana and going on drinking. To witness which that invited the master. Where master saw it, that invited master, come to our tantric sadhana. And he saw it there. The strenuous exertion for name and fame of the Dandis. Dandi Swami are Ashrama Swamis. That means if you have vairagya or not, you must take sannyas. And to keep that, you have to carry a danda. That is called Dandi Swami. The Swamis carrying staffs as their insignia. And at Vrindavan, the Vaishnava father's life spent in the company of women under the pretext of practicing sadhana. So many ill things have come, even in the sadhaka. All these and many more were the facts that revealed themselves in their true colors to the keen insight of the master and helped him in understanding the actual state of society in the country. He is coming back to his incarnationhood, his speciality. A mere observation of these events could not, of course, have helped him very much in this respect, had he not in himself had the realization of the very profound non-dual truth. If he was one of the paths, how could I understand? But he had the profound experience of non-dual truth. So his view about this sampradaya, that sampradaya was different. As he had already realized that truth, the idea of the ultimate aim of social life, was firmly fixed in the master's mind. It was therefore easy for him to sound and understand all things by testing them by that truth. Sound means test. You hit something, what sound it produces, by that way you test things. And the study and experience during his stay in the normal plane of consciousness of the daily events of individual and social life helped him in ascertaining the value of all things, inasmuch as he knew without doubt the goal to which true progress, civilization, morality, education, love of God, steadfast adherence to customs, yoga, karma, and other impelling forces were taking man or would lead him. Everything is meant for spiritual evolution of man when they reach their fully developed state. Beautiful here. Consider how could he understand how far a particular sadhu advanced if he had not the knowledge of true holiness? How could the very truthful master encourage people so firmly to go on pilgrimage and worship God with forms if he had not known without doubt that spirituality had been consolidated, so to speak, and deposited in holy places and in images of deities? Or how could he understand that exclusiveness in all the various religions was wrong if he had not known the direction they were taking and the goal they would ultimately lead to? He knew that they are leading to the same goal. So why exclusiveness? We also daily see sadhus, holy places, images of deities, hear the endless tumult produced by the discussion of various religions and scriptural doctrines, sometimes think one doctrine to be right and sometimes another, tempted by our delight in wrangles and intellectual gymnastics. We like quarrel, debates, and we like intellectual gymnastics, not spirituality. Again, trying to ascertain the goal of humanity by the study and observance of the daily events of the workaday world, we sometimes take one thing to be the goal, sometimes another, and failing to arrive at any definite conclusion, go on oscillating and vacillating, and as it happens, not unoften, turn atheist ultimately and regard worldly enjoyments as the real goal of life. Because this man says so, this man says so. We sometimes believe in some. In the Gita it is mentioned, Bahushakhai Anantascha Buddho Avyavasayinam. Those who have not fixed spirituality as their goal, their mind travels in so many infinite branches. And finally, it comes to enjoyment. If spirituality lost, enjoyment comes. What important help do we derive from this kind of experience of ours? From such ever-changing and never-abiding conclusions of ours? Nishyatmak Buddhi itself goes on changing. We are not confident that our crude minds can understand, even in 100 lives, without the help of great souls, the teachers of the world, what the master could by virtue of the aforesaid wonderful constitution and nature of his mind. We cannot understand only held by the scriptures. Master himself understood all these things. Master could, by virtue of the aforesaid wonderful constitution and nature of his mind, detect and understand at the very first sight. We infer from every action and behavior of the Master what a gulf of difference there is between his mind and ours. Though as minds they appear to be similar human minds. Devotional scriptures, therefore, have pointed out that the mind of an incarnation of God is made of an altogether different material of pure Sattva Guna. Vishuddha Urjita Sattva Svabhav. That is how they describe. That illumines and gives knowledge, Sattva. Untouched by Rajas and Tamas. Vishuddha Urjita. A little Rajas and Tamas has to be there to make a human body, but minimum. The master came to know of his own liberal doctrine. This is what he is arriving at. Observing thus from both the divine and the ordinary planes of consciousness, the Master came to know in an especial way from his contact with people at Dakshineshwar and during his visits to holy places the present lack of spirituality in the country and the prevailing exclusiveness in religious faith, either lack of spirituality or exclusiveness and denominations. He dived deeper and found out that although all religious doctrines were equally true, and although they make men of various natures reach ultimately the same goal through various paths, the previous teachers were either ignorant of this truth or intentionally refrained from preaching it. So, about the previous teachers. Our supremely revered Holy Mother has said all the previous teachers emphasized some aspect of spirituality. And so other aspects became suppressed. In Master, this has not been so. He dived deeper and found out that although men of various natures reach ultimately the same goal through various paths, the previous teachers were either ignorant of this truth or intentionally refrained from preaching it, considering the place, times, and persons to be unsuitable. That means it may be the necessity of the age or the place, the people to whom they're preaching that will not suit them. So they taught like that, maybe, or maybe they had not realized. Moreover, it dawned on him that this attitude of his, which was free from the slightest touch of exclusiveness or hatred, was an entirely novel thing in the world. It originated with him and he was to give it to the world. So the purpose of his incarnationhood became clear by his Nirvikalpa Samadhi Jnana and by his experience of sadhus and householders at Dakshineshwar and in places of pilgrimage. That is how it has come. And the master understood that he was the first in the world to realize the truth. All faiths are true as many faiths. All faiths are true. As many faiths, so many paths. So, that is the first time it has come. That is a fact. Many of us have now come to understand that the highest liberal doctrine, namely, all faiths are true, as many faiths, so many paths, which has charmed the world, first emanated from the Master's mouth. Some may raise an objection and say that at least a partial manifestation of that liberal principle was seen in some of the rishis and religious teachers of the past. But when one looks a little below the surface, it becomes clear to one that those teachers culled certain portion. Oh, something similar to harmony is there. Two, three things. Eclecticism and synthesis are similar to harmony. So, what some people did, Akbar the Great and Mahatma Gandhi, if you call him Mahatma. Some of the rishis and religious teachers of the past, but when one looks a little below the surface, it becomes clear to one that those teachers culled certain portions of each of these faiths with the help of their intelligence. So it is a path prescribed by them, not by any particular rishi. The master excluded nothing from any faith. Their intelligence, and then dished up a sort of harmony among what they regarded essential in them. Unlike other teachers of the past, the master excluded nothing from any faith. He practiced with equal enthusiasm all of them in his own life, reached the goal as indicated by those faiths, and realized that profound truth. It is, however, not our intention here to discuss this subject in detail. The only thing that we want to tell the reader here is that we get the proof of the existence in the master's life of this liberal principle from his childhood. That is the very nature. That is the purpose of this incarnation. But until he returned from his visits to holy places, the master was not able to understand with certainty that it was he alone who had experienced that liberalism. This is what happens. If I have some experience, I think everybody has. And then when I come out and say everybody does not have, then I understand there is special something in me. That it was he alone who had experienced that liberalism in the spiritual world, and that although the past seers, teachers, and incarnations of God preached in society how to reach the goal through particular paths, none of them up till then had preached that the same goal could be reached through all the different paths. Although at the time of his sadhana, he offered all his heart, all his desires at the lotus feet of the Divine Mother, and resolved never to return to the realm of Maya, and dwelt incessantly in the plane of non-dual consciousness, she did not allow him to do so. That means providence. But retained his body even after this through various inconceivable means. We have seen that one sadhu came and hit him and fed him, and all that the master knew was for this one purpose, the purpose of removing illiberalism and exclusiveness from the world as far as possible. He knew that, moreover, that the world too was thirsting for this extremely beneficial truth. We shall make here an attempt to tell the reader how we arrived at the aforesaid conclusion. We will continue this on the Monday now. Om सर्वधर्मस्थापकस्त्वं सर्वधर्मस्वरूपकः आचार्याणां महाचार्यो रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. ओम शांति शांति शांति. हरि ओम तत्सत्. श्री रामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु.